move now to our reporter Heidi Giokos. She's in the south of Johannesburg. She's in Soweto, in the area of Diepkloof. It's an area where there are a lot of hostels, and they've been running battles today. Heidi, you have been in this area since the early hours of the morning. I wonder if you could just tell us the current situation. We know that 3 people were arrested. We know there were clashes. But after a day of protest, what's been achieved?
I wouldn't say anything has really been achieved, Sally, in terms of the earlier clashes that we saw between community members here of Diepkloof and Soweto and the police. At the heart of the issue is the fact that they don't have electricity, they do not have proper ablution facilities, and they do not have adequate housing. Perhaps while I explain this to you, I can ask my colleague JK to maybe just show you that it is completely dark. You're not going to be seeing much, but it's absolutely dark here at the Diepkloof hostel area, and that is because they do not have electricity. They don't have access to electricity. They've never had access to electricity, and when they do have some sort of electricity, it's because they have illegally connected, and they've openly expressed that they do illegally connect to get electricity because they are constantly asking for electricity and for basic services, and their cries and their concerns fall on deaf ears. We saw some violent clashes earlier today between community members and the police. It was rather volatile. We saw about 4 police inyalas. The situation became a little calm just after 12 o'clock. We got an indication from the community members that they would be coming back into the main section here on Chris Hani Road in Soweto. It's a very important intersection because it's leading into and out of Soweto. It's also the road where Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital is. But it doesn't seem as though community members agreed to come back because traffic is flowing. Everything seems to be back to normal. There is, of course, a police signal still on standby in case there is any sort of volatility throughout the evening. I must also just emphasize that we did receive reports that there was a beer truck that was looted in the early hours of this morning. We also know about 3 media vehicles were damaged because of the rocks that were thrown. So, as I mentioned, very volatile, but for now the situation does remain a lot calmer than what we saw, and community members are most likely to return tomorrow until we've been told their concerns and their issues have been addressed.
So, Heidi, these problems have been rumbling for a long time. Do you know why it's suddenly surged up again?
Yes, so in the past 3 weeks or so, Sally, we've seen about 3 to 4 protests, specifically from Diepkloof Hostel here. And it seems as though the community just cannot take it anymore. What's interesting is that this issue is not a new issue. We do know that about in 2007, around about then, the community here in Diepkloof indicated, especially here in the hostel area, indicated that they need better housing. And it seems as though it's very dark now, so we can't show you at this point. But there were new houses that were built. It's almost apartments that were built. But the community was told that they actually have to rent that out. And the community was saying, why should they rent out, for example, RDB houses? Because they view that as an RDB house. And it just seems that from far back as 2007 or so, that housing issue has remained. We've taken a walk inside here, not just today with my colleague Giokos, but also last week I was with another colleague of ours, and we were walking in this community, and it's shocking to see the living conditions that people are subjected to. 0 ablution facilities, Sally. They are literally using those rented ablution facilities that are never maintained or kept up with. There is no running water in these hostels. Half of them are falling apart. Some of them don't even have roofs or doors. So either way, even if this is an issue from 2007, it's obviously something that hasn't been dealt with. And I must emphasize that we've seen no authorities or officials come through to address this community. And that's why the community is saying they have felt neglected, they have felt ignored, they have felt disrespected, and they will continue until somebody addresses this problem.
And it's interesting, Heidi. I mean, we lost our connection to Diepkloof in the north of Johannesburg, where the community is also feeling being ignored, even though they've got this letter from the president's office. Essentially, it says, oh, we're setting up a task team. They wanted the attention of the president, and there seems to be a theme that there's just no one listening. So eventually you protest to get attention, but even then there doesn't seem to be anyone listening, anyone fully responding. Was there no one on site today to actually try and negotiate with these unhappy residents? No one from the authorities, from the local government?
Absolutely nobody, Sally. There was only police presence. As I mentioned, 4 police signalas, 2 of them, if I'm not mistaken, with JMPD, and then as well as public order policing were here. They are still here. They are in front of me. But nobody to really just sit down and engage with the community. And as you say, in Diepkloof, it's the very same issue. It's basic services that are not being delivered to the community. And the reality is that, you might tell the community, well, you have to rent out these new facilities, but people here are underprivileged. People here don't have the luxury of paying for an RDP house that they claim should be something that is government provided. And the community is saying that the only time they ever see people come here is when it's election time and political parties come to campaign. They promise them all sorts of things and then nothing is ever delivered. And they've indicated that there will be a lot of resistance should political parties start moving in for the 2024 elections, because they feel as though nothing has been done. And that's why they have to become aggressive in terms of blocking main intersections and stopping people from going about their days. We spoke to a nurse very early this morning and she said, I have to urgently get to Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. Please, can you let me through? And the community said, under no circumstance will you go through. Eventually the police opened up the road and let her go through, but no sort of authorities or anybody from the city of Johannesburg to address this community.
Yeah, and it's very worrying indeed. And as you say, Heidi, the community of this hostel, they're vowing to carry on protests tomorrow. And we can see behind you, it's pitch black there, absolutely no electricity, and that's their main gripe. And while the main gripe in the north of Johannesburg in Diepkloof is the crime issue, again, it's about no visible policing, no one there to help this crime-ridden area. People feel abandoned and not heard. Heidi, thank you so much for staying out so late and just giving us the very latest after a very troubled day in that area. Thank you so much, Heidi Giokos there in Soweto. Now, still to come on SA Tonight.